Today I'm talking about how resentment really works in your life and how it's poison for you. It's up to you to get it stopped and rarely has any effect on the other person or organization who you feel has wronged you. I'm going to be straight with you on this topic. Some of this might be difficult to hear, yet there is great freedom in understanding the dynamics of resentment. Resentment is a you problem. There's rarely ever a reason to blame the other person for our resentments. How can this be, you say? What about people who cross my boundaries? Surely if they don't abide by my boundaries, they're to blame for my resentment. Well, let's get into it and answer these questions and see how to bring more freedom into your life. Because we could always use more freedom. Let's begin with answering the question, who does resentment hurt? There's a saying that goes like this, quote, resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies, unquote. And I'll add, or the other person is inconvenienced or gravely hurt, or at the very least feels really, really bad for what they've done to you. Let's begin with a quick reference to what resentment even is. Resentment is a perceived injustice or injury. It can be real or imagined. And the result is that as anger, needs, and wants are not expressed, the anger festers over time. When resentment has taken hold, it becomes old, stuck anger with the feeling of disdain that you're right and the other person is wrong. The anger and upset feelings are replayed over and over, way beyond the original event or events, creating an internal toxic environment that feeds off of itself, affecting your relationships in many different ways. So why is resentment like drinking poison and hoping this will somehow affect the other person and bring justice to the situation? Resentment is a wound you do to yourself. Resentment almost exclusively hurts the person harboring the resentment. And that person would be you or me. We take the toxicness of resentment into our soul and heart, where it breeds anger, bitterness, and we ruminate upon it. The hope is that justice will be served and that this will affect the other person, and they'll see how much they've hurt you, and they will feel bad inside. So unfortunately, this toxic soup swimming around in your body accumulates in your system until it does begin to poison, except you are the one being poisoned, not the other person. And the other person often is not even giving the situation a second thought, and likely never will. Even if you spend time trying to get them to see what you see, no matter how bad you feel inside, and how much anger you try to throw at the other person, especially if you're not expressing any of it, they rarely ever will feel this, and yet you feel it deep in your nervous system, causing damage to your body and your life and your relationships. So how exactly do you not have resentment when someone's behavior is unacceptable to you? Stopping resentment, it is about appropriate boundaries and, most importantly, sticking to those boundaries. This is the bottom line to having freedom in your life. Of course, there's outliers of extreme situations, such as being held captive, but we're leaving extreme situations out of this discussion, so I want to just say that there. Let's sort out what boundaries are. Many people are not clear on what a boundary is. A boundary is something you can set for yourself and you can hold to without the other person changing. So let me say that one more time. A boundary can be held by your actions and does not require anyone else to change their behavior. You always have the choice of talking to the other person and setting a boundary, leaving the situation, leaving the relationship, or even putting up with said behavior without harboring resentment. Those are the choices in front of you. If you stay in the situation and say nothing, then this is on you. And any resentment you have is on you and not the other person. If you stay in a situation, then you're accepting it. You're fully accepting it. Setting a boundary is about loving yourself, yet many people use boundaries as a way to control other people, and they think that's what a boundary is. You better do this or else. If you do this, then you may be ready to click off of this video if this is something you do. But I hope you will stay, because understanding boundaries is key to healthy relationships and is key to freedom in your life. An interesting thing happens when you stop blaming, stop trying to control others, and stop harboring anger. You begin to actually hear and see what the other person is saying and doing. To view their behavior at face value. See, when we try to change others, we keep an idea of them as this changed person. Often this idea of them is pure fantasy. We keep this idea of who we want them to be, and we focus on how angry we are that they keep doing us wrong and won't change. Sadly, this false made-up idea can stop us from seeing the real truth of them, good or bad. It can even stop us from seeing their value. Know that people rarely ever change for another person. People change when it's more painful to stay the same. And so our time is best spent changing ourselves and not trying to change other people. It just doesn't work. And trying to change other people places you in a type of mental prison where the other person is in your head taking up space and causing havoc, and you are doing this to yourself. They're not even doing it. Let's look at an example that includes boundary setting or holding resentment. One choice will be freedom for you in your mind, while the other choice will be a burden and will take away freedom from your life. So let's say you make a lunch date with your friend who is often or maybe even always late, and they're late again. It's now time for you as an adult to figure out what to do next. You can let them know that this doesn't work for you, and you can say something such as, "It's important to me that we begin on time, and so I'm asking for you to be on time for our next lunch date." And the next time they show up, let's say they show up late again. So you say again that being late does not work for you, but this time you add your boundary. And this goes something like, "It doesn't work for me when you're late for our lunch dates. For next time, if you're not there 15 minutes after the start time, I will need to leave and move on with my day." It's that simple. The person can do what they want while you keep your boundary. Your boundary is in your control, and you don't need anyone to change for you to keep it. Let's take a moment to look at the alternative to setting a boundary, the second choice, and see how this impacts you and the other person. Let's say that you keep making plans with your friend and they keep being late, and you begin to harbor resentment towards your friend, and this, as resentments usually do, only gets worse over time. And so you find yourself sitting at lunch with your friend as they talk on and on as if nothing's wrong. They're having a great old time, and yet you sit there with festering anger inside, hoping the other person will feel your anger about them being late and feel your resentment towards them, and that they may see fit to change because they see how upset you are. I know how hard saying what's bothering us can be when we have trouble sticking up for ourselves, and yet I'd like to point out a hard truth here. One of the reasons people don't like setting proper boundaries is because we don't like facing the truth. The truth of this situation is that if you stick up for yourself, this may be the end of the lunch dates, and maybe even the end of the friendship, depending on how the other person responds. Often we can't handle the reality of truth, so we say nothing and betray ourselves instead. It takes courage to stick up for yourself and to love yourself enough to have adequate boundaries. So one choice you have is to set a boundary and risk the end of how things are. With setting boundaries, things may change for the better, and a breath of fresh air could possibly be brought into the relationship, or things could change for the worse. Either one of those things could happen. And there's another valid way forward, a third valid way forward, but you have to have internal honesty for this one. You can also choose, the other way is to choose to fully accept with zero resentment the other person's behavior. But if you choose this route, you have to let their behavior be okay with you, or else you may accidentally fall into resentment. These choices you get to make, and hopefully each of us will be making the decision that is the most loving decision for ourselves and the relationship. Let's recap ways to respond to difficult situations. So the first thing to do is always ask politely and let them know that it's important to you. They may have a solution to offer, you never know, or you could work something out between the two of you. Always begin with the simplest solution. But how do you handle this if the person says no? They will not stop arriving late, or they have excuses and reasons why they just can't comply with that. They just can't make it on time. It's just not going to happen. All of that stuff, they go on and on. Or else another common way is they say they understand and will stop, but they actually just keep arriving late. After you've asked nicely and given them a chance to change, let's say your person does one of three things. 1, refuses to comply. 2, gives excuses for why there's no way they can change. 3, say they will change, but does not actually change, just keeps repeating. Trying to change another and then harboring resentment because they won't change is how to not love yourself or the other person. Rather, it's a way to betray yourself and to betray the other person. Boundaries are loving to you, so you do not betray yourself by harboring resentment. And boundaries are the best thing for the other person too. People who are emotionally healthy feel safer knowing exactly where you stand instead of playing games. Resentment is the opposite of safety in healthy relationships. This is when it's time to set a boundary. This is where many people don't set a boundary and instead become resentful and hold a grudge and try to force the other person to change to their ways. Some even resort to revenge where they do spiteful things to get back at the person, or roll their eyes or say things under their breath or sigh, different things like that to try to get them to notice. Know that having boundaries is how to have true freedom for yourself and for others as well. And before I go, I want to acknowledge here that really looking at the truth that's in front of you, of how someone deals with your stated boundary, is not always easy, but does give important insights worth paying attention to. You will have some decisions to make, and you may decide that you don't want to be in a relationship, for example, where the other person is chronically late, and you may decide, to limit this relationship or maybe end it altogether. However hard the choices are, setting boundaries is much better than harboring resentment that builds with festering anger and disdain that destroys your body, mind, and soul, gets right in there and causes damage. And it is definitely a destroyer of relationships. Nothing good ever comes from harboring resentment against others. And setting proper boundaries is a way out of resentment and a way into healthier relationships. Thank you so much for being here with me today. You have a good day. You are loved.